My dad.
Moving through the streets with swagger and ease. Often works two jobs to take care of our needs. Taking it all in stride. Daddy seldom complains. His emotions he'll hide. All his aches and pains stays up in his head about what must be done. Taking no time off. Daddy stays on the run. He's my dad and I love him. With him I have no fear, because anytime I need him I know Daddy's right here.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. Oh, it's just my dad. My dad. My dad.
Moving through the streets with swagger and ease. Often works two jobs to take care of our needs. Taking it all in stride. Daddy seldom complains. His emotions he'll hide. All his aches and pains stays up in his head about what must be done. Taking no time off. Daddy stays on the run. He's my dad and I love him. With him I have no fear, because anytime I need him I know Daddy's right here.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. Oh, it's just my dad. My dad. My dad.
Moving through the streets with swagger and ease. Often works two jobs to take care of our needs. Taking it all in stride. Daddy seldom complains. His emotions he'll hide. All his aches and pains stays up in his head about what must be done. Taking no time off. Daddy stays on the run. He's my dad and I love him. With him I have no fear, because anytime I need him I know Daddy's right here.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. Oh, it's just my dad. My dad. My dad.
Moving through the streets with swagger and ease. Often works two jobs to take care of our needs. Taking it all in stride. Daddy seldom complains. His emotions he'll hide. All his aches and pains stays up in his head about what must be done. Taking no time off. Daddy stays on the run. He's my dad and I love him. With him I have no fear, because anytime I need him I know Daddy's right here.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. Oh, it's It's just my dad. My dad. My dad.
Moving through the streets with swagger and ease. Often works two jobs to take care of our needs. Taking it all in stride. Daddy seldom complains. His emotions he'll hide. All his aches and pains. Stays up in his head about what must be done. Taking no time off. Daddy stays on the run. He's my dad and I love him. With him I have no fear. Because anytime I need him, I know Daddy's right here.
In America. But nobody wants to have a conversation about how difficult it is being black in the hood.
Eyes wide open, finally see the light. Ejected from the womb, the expectant held me tight. In the eye of the beholder, another king is born. To those who seek the vision, from her bosom you'll be torn. They'll bait you with false friendships and lure you with good and plenty. Truly they will love you, even those who are your enemy. Always stay the course and remember to stand your ground and praise the living force, for it is he who got the lost and found. Black boy, keep your head up, you're more special than you know. Black boy, just be patient, when it's your time to shine, you glow. Black boy, black boy, black boy, black boy. Inspired by your brothers, the rightly guided, and others, deciding who to follow, conditioning your druthers. You're driven by a desire to fulfill your role as sire. But there's some who you admire. They'll lead you straight down to the hellfire. Delusion and inclusion, creating your illusion. You don't know who to trust, and it's all inciting your confusion. Protect yourself at all times, and don't just fill a void. You just choose your circle wisely, or your spirit they'll destroy. And to those who you entrust, never ever give them your all. Retain a sense of self for when the time
comes there, true nature calls.
Good morning, Brother Brian Cooper. How are you, sir?
Keep your head up. You're more special than you know. Black boy, just be patient. When it's your time.
Good morning, all, and welcome to another episode of Daddy's Right Here Live. I'm your host, as always, Severe Lee. Happy holidays to all of you. We're celebrating the holidays, and for those of you who don't celebrate the holidays, just recognize that those people all around you who are having fun. Respect that. Doesn't have to be your holiday. Doesn't have to be your twist. But you got to respect that which others partake in. Didn't say condone it. Didn't say receive it. Just acknowledge that that's what others do. Right? I talked about that a couple of weeks ago in another show about how I don't celebrate the holiday, but my wife is Christian, right? So I assist with decorating and purchasing the tree and all those things like that, because those things have a different significance to her than they do to me, right? But I recognize that as a child, I came up in an environment where there was a Christmas that was celebrated. And I always will remember, family. I recall, those days and who was there, who's not there today. So those things for me are just recognized differently. So let's all, make sure that, in a spirit of gratitude, especially for this day above ground, which many didn't get the opportunity to see. In that spirit, man, let's just, make it a joyous holiday, for all. Switch this off here. Go to my background flow. So for the last few weeks, we've been talking about self-care, right? We talked about the formation of the self-concept and how people come to see themselves and how people see themselves through the lens of others, right? And people all around us offer us all these suggestions or recommendations, demands, and so on and so forth about who we should be, who we should recognize, who we should observe, and all those other things, and holidays being one of them. And then we went on to talk about the social aspects and those influences around us. When you look at social media, you see a lot of people, have this post on like TikTok and things like that, and they call themselves influencers. I would never, for me, be so arrogant to say that I am an influencer. I have a personal mission statement, and that personal mission statement is that I'm driven by divine precepts and an undying passion to facilitate change in the lives of others. Period. I can say that I'm being the best person that I can be. I can say that, as far as my children, that I'll be the best father that I can be. But only my children can tell me that I'm a good father, right? Because that's my checks and balances. When I'm interacting with them and, seeing the things that I have taught them throughout the years as children and seeing their lives, come to fruition, their hopes, dreams, and aspirations, and, that relationship that I have with them, right? They tell me I'm a good father, so I don't look for recognition in that capacity. What I do know is that for me, striving to always be a good servant to God, right? No holy roller, none of that stuff. I've actually made the decision, over the past few years to not practice an organized, formalized, dogmatic religion. I've come through the years of being exposed to varied religions. I think everything but Judaism is the only thing that I have not delved into in terms of learning the teachings and practice. But I have, in fact, read all the books. I've read all the books. Um, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah. Those are books that I've read throughout the years of my life. It's from 1988 till to date. I have studied Islam. I had very good educators, philosophers. Studied under Imam Abdul Alim in Philadelphia, who was an understudy of a sort to Wallace D. Muhammad, who brought Islam in its true form, to blacks in North America. So, but I've chosen for a variety of reasons not to practice religion, and a lot of those things had to do with during the course of my studies. See, this is why it's important to study, to get an understanding, which is what my imam told me. Get an understanding that's befitting for your spirit. We're all going to read, and we're all going to come away from it with a different interpretation. Nobody can tell you what's right and what's wrong. What people can say to you is this is an interpretation that they have gathered, and this is how they choose to practice. And you can only practice something and bring something to fruition based on your own filters. So that goes back to self-care when we were talking about the development that happens in the home and how the parents, the caretakers, the siblings are that first line of defense from ignorance. It is important that we're teaching and not telling. Because I grew up in environments where somebody was telling me that you were going to church, or we're going to Kingdom Hall on Tuesday and Thursday, and then we're going this on Saturday, and and doing all these things, but never having an understanding of the why. Never having an understanding of the why. And not only never having the understanding of the why, but not seeing the consistency in what it is that you were saying. Which is one of the greatest things that kind of weighed on me throughout all the years. And when you keep telling me, praise God, praise Jesus, peace and blessings be upon Muhammad, and so on and so forth. And then I'm seeing your conduct towards others inconsistent. I'm seeing some of your conduct towards me. Excuse me, y'all. Inconsistent. And it's not an easy thing to do. And then when you start looking at the fellowship aspect of the practices, behaviors and attitudes, within the ummah, within the congregation, within the ranks, within the pews, you start seeing people's behavior, sitting right before you in those venues, how they leer at people and how the whispers and things like that. That's not what I found in any of my teachings that to be appropriate. Those things that I did find, those kind of behaviors that I did find within scripture, told about the outcome upon one's spirit, the outcome upon mankind as a result of that kind of behavior. So what can you possibly be studying? What could you possibly be studying if the outcome of your studies brings forth this kind of conduct, this kind of behavior, this kind of attitude towards others, even towards yourself? Good morning, all. Simply amazing, girl, mom. What's happening? So right now we're talking about spirituality. What happens inside of you when you're in those venues? Do you feel more uncomfortable when you're sitting in the venue, your professed practice? How do you feel when you enter into that? How do you feel prior to that?
How do you feel when you interact with those who are a part of that, who are members, right? How do you feel around those folks? Do you really feel welcome? Do you really feel warm? Do you really feel spirit? See, the spirituality actually begins in your home. I am the imam, the pastor, the minister of my home, first and foremost. First and foremost. So that level of leadership and conditioning begins in the home, right? And don't take leadership lightly, because it's not about a title. My title in the workplace is up there on the food chain, but it means absolutely nothing if I don't display the principles, the values, the beliefs that I profess, those ethical guidelines that I have to adhere to, right? As written, and those that are defined in my job duties as a credentialed person, right? So there are a lot of things that you have to internalize, but when we're talking about self-care and we're talking about things that are necessary for you to feel whole, for you to feel comfortable within yourself, right? You have to take a look at everything you surround yourself with. And and it's not a matter of judging others, but it's me observing and making a judgment as to what is befitting for my spirit and what needs to be removed. Because that's what it all comes down to. When we look at self-care, we have to look at the things that we are allowing into our space, that we are allowing to sit on our spirit, that we are allowing to constantly be around us and gnaw at us. Anytime you're around a person and they cause your spirit to shift, you need to take a look at that relationship. You need to take a look at that person and why you're being around that person. See, it's different when you are interacting with the rest of the world. You understand what I'm saying? It's different because you know well, you don't know, but in being responsible and holding yourself accountable for your conduct, there's a right way to go about interacting with others. You don't have to walk around smiling and kikiing with everybody, but you do have to understand that these are human beings, and everybody that you encounter has their own baggage, has their own stuff. You never know a space where a person is. You never know. You don't even know a space that you're in sometimes, because you are just not linked into yourself. You're just on autopilot. And a lot of people walk around on autopilot. The consciousness of humanity is absent from many people. It's all about things. It's all about doing. It's all about task. It's all about you. I often, get I wouldn't say chastised, but I'm always teased by the wife about stranger danger, because I'm always interacting with people, and I so easily interact with people. Matter of fact, Brian Cuba, for one, I met him at an event. I had never been, involved in the entertainment venues, and I attended a function at David O up in Philadelphia. I don't know what his position is within the government, the local government, but he gave this event, and I had got involved in acting. And I was standing there while, David was doing his thing, and Brian had came in, and we were all both standing there, just observing, and we started having a conversation. And just in that conversation, he gave me his card. He gave me his contact information, and and here he is today. And this was back in it's been a while. I want to say 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. But it's a matter of your spirit. When you are grounded, when you're a grounded person, and you have a hold on your own biases, your likes, dislikes, your when you have a grasp of those things, you're aware. There's a consciousness of humanity. There's a consciousness that when you interact with people, that your spirit should show, not your intellect. Not your intellect, because I know it was nothing that I said, when having a conversation with Brian, that, it was a matter of there was a connection. Hey, what's going on, bro? Yeah. I've never been in, I have no idea who any of these people are. And people were coming to me because I came in a suit because I didn't know. And, people thought that I was an actor. I was like, nah, I just participated in a couple of plays and not realizing in that moment, well, you're an actor, so, but it was just a matter of people have to see you, but you can't show you so people can see you until you learn how to be you. Does that make sense? So that means that you have to connect with the inner self. You have to see what you're projecting to others, right? What are you projecting to others? Are people staying away from you? And a lot of times you already know this information because you're right in every relationship that you have, right? The relationship you have with your children, the relationship you have with your spouse, the relationship, my eyes often water like this. It's such a sensitive topic. So you have to look at these things because you've heard it before. If somebody tells you today in a conversation that you never listened, although I'm in disagreement with the statement because at some point in time you do listen, but it's a matter of, didn't you hear this before? Somebody was telling you before that you don't listen. So what's happening inside of you that forces you to put up these walls, to put up a barrier between you and other people? You understand? So it's like, I'm pumping gas and somebody next pump starts talking to me. I didn't know where, hey, from Philly. Yeah, start having a conversation. Then another dude, I'm in Macy's. Hey, he's looking at me like, now, I got an Eagles hat on. He's got a 49ers jacket on, right? And it was like not long after the game. But just because I'm wearing those things don't necessarily mean we have to have any kind of communication. We don't. We see people walking around with opposing sport teams all the time. But me and this guy started having a conversation. It was like we knew each other forever. This was an older white dude, And he peeped me coming up the aisle. I just peeped him looking at me. I never even observed the fact that he had a 49ers jacket on, so I got up to him. And we began to have a conversation. Laughed and joked and, gave each other a fist pump before we rolled out. But it's a matter of you have to condition yourself, man, because people need that. We need that as human beings. We need that. We need that contact. We need that contact. If you look at a blade of grass, right, as being something that's just there, that you can walk on or you can admire its color, you still haven't connected with the world around you. That grass, that blade of grass needs you. Our breathing contributes to the environment. That grass contributes to the environment. There's all contributions being made all around us by these natural things. But we're so connected to the unnatural, the man-made, the created things by man that we're losing sight of our purpose within this world. So when I look at spirituality versus the religious practices, it's easier for me to connect. I can sit on the patio and I can watch. Hey, Rosemary, what's going on, Rose? I can connect with nature. I sit on the patio all the time, and I can tell you about how old the iguanas are, because I used to have reptiles too, but I can tell you about how old they are. I see the young ones when they come out. So if I see them at this point in time, I can pretty much tell you what happens about a year old. Same way with the ducks, we have different species of duck out here it's a reserve land that the town homes are built on. And I can tell you those kind of things. I can tell when it's the blue herons or owl. I know who the male is and who the female is. They actually had a few kids. I think they had about 3 or 4 babies, so they're pretty big now. I can tell you what's in the water. What type of fish is pretty much in the water, because I see the blue heron catch them, and I take pictures and stuff like that. The natural things, man, those natural things. If you fish, you just sit there. I'm not a freshwater fisherman. I'm a deep sea person, but freshwater, you toss it in and you sit there and you chill if you're doing that type of fishing. But it's a matter of connecting to it. And I talked about this in the show before last. That's why grass and trees and things have been removed from most of the communities, especially when you start looking at housing, subsidized housing. They put trees here and there for look. But when you live in an environment where there's plenty of grass, that's why one of the places you can go where you can get that is the park. People don't use parks like they used to. Well, because of the violence and everything else that happens, but parks are free. To go sit on a park bench and just watch nature, not watch what's happening with, the hood, but just sit there and just watch the birds and watch the squirrels and see what it is they do, seasonal changes in their behavior, things like that. We have seasonal changes in our own behavior. I'm going to do a show in a couple of weeks on seasonal depression, or different types of depression. You have situational, you have seasonal, you have clinical, you have different types of depression, and we don't take a look at those kind of things. So a lot of times, if you're not, again, caring for yourself in ways that we talked about in previous shows and this show here, when you're not caring for yourself, man, and you're caring for everybody else is getting what they need from you. What are you getting from them? How many people can you call right now that uplift your spirit? How many people do you have in your circle who actually uplift your spirit? How many people are just constantly complaining and constantly talking about what they're going to do and constantly get nothing done? Hey, I respect you. I love you, but I can't just like talk to you every day and you're just complaining and whining and crying about the conditions that you have yourself in, about the situations you have yourself in. I can sit in chaos and be good. Shut it down. Shut it down. Separate myself from it. Right? So when you start looking at your places of practice in terms of religion, ask yourself, are you getting what you need? Because if you're only regurgitating, if you're only emulating what others are doing within that environment, then you are truly missing the mark. You ever heard the term what you eat don't make me poop? Yeah. That's what this is about. Right? You can read the book at home, and a lot of people ain't even reading the book at home. And a lot of people who are actually reading at home are hearing the words of others. Your pastor, your minister, your imam, you're sitting there and you're hearing that, instead of trying to learn, by just taking a passage and taking that passage and memorizing that package and applying it, I'm not gonna check the mail, passage, and just internalize it and look at yourself and see if you're actually doing these things. And then when you go into the venue, right, see if you feel that or see that happening in the environment. I don't do idle chatter. I just, that's just not who I am. I can have conversation, indulge in great conversation, but I can't sit around with the whining and the complaining and the gossip. And I can't, I don't do that. So like you call me on the telephone, like Pastor Cordial's like, okay, well, what are we talking about? We got to have a subject matter here that is relevant. If you need some guidance, I can do that. If you got something, I can listen to you too. But at the end of the day, what are you calling for? Because I'm just not an idle chit chat person, and I know that about me. So when others who encounter me who don't know that, it can sometimes be wrongly perceived. I'm not responsible totally for what one thinks of me, but I am in part, because somebody's going to always have something negative to say and somebody's going to always have something positive to say. But I look at my encounters with people, right? And if I'm not feeling you, you feel me. You feel me, bro? You know what I'm saying? You feel me? And I'm not feeling it. And sometimes it tends to show on my face because of me being the intellectual that I am. I'm always thinking. I'm always in my head planning, building. So other stuff gets in the way. It starts sounding like wah, 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 like that Charlie Brown adult. That's what stuff starts sounding like in my head after a while when you're talking. So that's who I am, and I know that's who I am. But I also know that there's empathy that must be a part of the interaction with anyone. You need to be able to understand that this is how I communicate. So it's better to understand than be understood. So you sit and, you listen and you acknowledge people, you make your eye contact, and, you nod the head and so on and so forth. That's part of someone knowing that you're paying attention to what they're saying. So I've had to learn those kind of things about me so I can see how I was actually negatively impacting some people. Because some of the things I do, negatively impact people. So if it doesn't, for one, I know that there's somebody else out there that's like that person, in personality and character, so on and so forth, and condition. And I need to be able to be prepared to interact with people appropriately. Right? Because you begin to see commonality. I'm not the only one who deals with, things that I deal with. There's somebody else out there who has been divorced. There's someone out there who has children. There's someone out there, who has experienced substance abuse or some kind of mental breakdown and things of that nature. It's commonality. So when you see it happen with one, that's when the work happens. Right? Because if you see that look in the person's eyes, that wounded look, like somebody just been subjected to one of your less endearing traits, right? You start looking at God did it again. So and then being the caretaker and enabler. Well, I'm a recovering enabler, because I've learned some things throughout the years. But it's a matter of looking at what it feels like inside. Your spirit. What settles your spirit? If the book you profess to adhere to settles your spirit, and then you go into the venue and your spirit feels unsettled, if you begin to have anxiety and negative thoughts on your way or while preparing to go, it's a good chance you don't need to be there. Never let anybody convince you otherwise. You have to live for yourself, because whatever decision you make for your spirit, right, is yours. It's your responsibility. It's now yours. It's now yours. Because I can tell you, I have felt worse, in religious venues, than I did before. Before I got there, I just I came out of there feeling worse. Because of the congregants, because of the environment that is not created. Because the person standing at the podium is only delivering the message. The message that they're delivering through their own filters, right? So they interpret information differently. The onus on them is to present the information. But the in-between stuff, what I call the fluff, is the stuff that they use as the theatrical aspect of delivering the information. Some are more theatrical than others. But they're trying to drive home a point. That's where the theatrical aspects of it come into play. But if you're not grounded yourself in the values and the principles, of the content that you're presenting, it doesn't matter because it will never be delivered upon a heart. A heart. A lot of information now is being delivered and it's entering the mind, but it's not entering the heart. And that's what makes the difference. That's what makes the difference. Right? And again, it's still a matter of the writings, the origination of writings, who wrote it. That's a whole nother different discussion that we're not going to have today. Maybe one day we'll have it. If you go to my Suburban Educational Station on YouTube, there is an episode on religion versus spirituality that goes into more depth of both. But right now, this focus is on self-care. So let me go to the article. Spiritual self-care. Research shows that a lifestyle, including religion or spirituality, is generally a healthier lifestyle. Right? It's generally a healthier lifestyle. That's why I say this show is not about spirituality versus religion. It's about spirituality and religion. Right? So it's important to understand when you read things, you need to be able to make the connection. Right? Article. Nurturing your spirit, however, doesn't have to involve religion. It can involve anything that helps you develop a deeper sense of meaning, understanding, or connection with the universe. And that's what I said earlier. And I just want to remind you guys, I don't pre-read in depth these articles. I find articles, a lot of them come from Psychology Today or some resources that it provides. But this is something that we're doing together. We're doing this together. So I'm learning together. I'm giving you information based on my understanding as a human being and as a clinician. Right? So we're doing these things together. So this is something that's consistent in the writings, in the research, in regards to understanding religion and spirituality and its benefit. I can't say necessity, its benefit to the individual. A deeper sense of meaning. What does that mean? What does that really mean? I've been in the field of human services for 30 years, specifically with men and women transitioning from state correctional institutions who have serious and persistent mental illnesses. I've worked in community corrections. I've worked in therapeutic community environments. And now I'm again in the prisons. So I've been in the prisons down here in Florida for about 6 years. So I learn from them what their needs are. I'm telling you what your needs are. It's not for me to do. You're here to get the treatment, so it's a matter of you and self-discovery. Self-discovery. So in facilitating of groups and sessions, there's a matter of leading someone down the path, sometimes back down the path that they came through, to begin to see what happened along the way. It's like Little Red Robin Hood. A lot of things happen on the way to grandmother's house, right? Then you meet the wolf, right? And then you meet the wolf again. And who actually was the wolf? Things like that. So, and it's the same thing I do on the shows, stimulate the thinking so you can begin to find out more about yourself because it's about self-discovery. What is your meaning? What is your purpose? I told you my personal mission statement, because, and that's something that I've had since my studies at Lincoln University in my master's program. So, because that was one of the requirements that we, to make one, and I've been living by that since. And that's back in 2004 is when I actually wrote that personal mission statement. So for me, that's meaning. That's my purpose. So when I remind myself of my meaning, when I remind myself of my purpose, I have something to stand on, right? And then the rest of it becomes a part of my foundation. Becomes a part of my foundation. So what are you reading? Why are you reading it? Is it something that somebody took you into and you never parted from? Is it something that you've never questioned and only, said that this is who you are, this is what you are? I remember, what was the book? What's by Maya Angelou? I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. I think somewhere in the foreword or the preface of the book, she talks about encountering a woman at a bus stop. And the woman introduced herself, and for instance, she said, "Hi, my name is Susan. I'm a Christian." And Maya Angelou's response to that was, "Really?" Then there was some more text after that spoke to much of what we were talking about in the early part of this show, that when you look at religion, you look at it that you're a representative of that book. Therefore, its content in totality, not in part, in totality, is your obligation, is your responsibility to know it. It's your responsibility to adhere to it. It's your responsibility to be the guide to others in terms of what that stands for, what that represents, in totality. What you don't know, you don't know. I get it. But when you know, you can't go back to not knowing and continue moving forward as though it doesn't exist. And that's what happens a lot. And that's ultimately what she was indicating, implying at the time of that conversation when she met the woman at the bus stop. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a guide for all of us. In the Quran, the second surah, I forget which ayat they are. It says, "In it is guidance." In it, the book, is guidance. Is guidance. So, do you read fiction or do you read nonfiction when it comes to reading? If you're a reader. Do you thrive on a particular genre of music? Not saying listen to, do you thrive on? And when I say thrive on, it's like, do you constantly entertain, the negative music? Just hit a nigga, kill a nigga, knock a nigga out kind of music. Or are you listening to Odine Pope, some John Coltrane, some smooth jazz? What are you thriving? What makes you thrive? You understand? Because that's part of your conditioning. I'm not saying you can't listen to it. I'm going to ask you what you thrive off of. That's something that you put on all the time, every time you enter your car, every time you come into the house, every time you plug up your headphones. What are you thriving off of? And you have to understand that you're thriving off of it because that's what you constantly feed your spirit. And that's what takes you along this course of purpose, of finding meaning. Of finding meaning. Today's music, that a lot of folks are listening to is guiding them in a wrong direction. It's guiding the thinking to always thinking about sex, drugs, money, violence, you know. And even when people, listen to, when you're going to listen to your other musics, when you listen to your religious based music, are you hearing it? Is it benefiting your spirit? Are you feeling it in your spirit, or is it just feeding your intellect? Is it just feeding your intellect? Is it just giving you something to think about? But if you have all these blockages of unresolved within yourself, you're not going to be able to internalize it. I can tell you when I was getting high back in the 80s, and I got introduced to Islam. I went to see Minister Farrakhan at the Civic Center. Yeah, at the Civic Center. And man, I sat there and I cried, man. My spirit was in such disarray. And it was a brother that I had met who was the boyfriend of a cousin who said, yo, come on, because again, when it's time for you to learn, the teacher shows up. So the brother said, well, come on, I want you to go to, hear the minister. I went to hear Minister Farrakhan speak. And he started, talking about the responsible behaviors and irresponsible behaviors of the black man and how we need to do this, that, and the other. But it was the delivering of it, man. Before that fire turns into a bonfire, if you ever heard and sat and listened to the minister starts off with, when you first put that match on and it's just smoldering a little bit, and then he gets turned up. He gets turned up. And man, by the time he got turned up, I was in tears. I felt like he was talking to me. Yeah. And I started internalizing that information, man, and I began to stand up. I was still getting high, still reading Quran. Yeah. I ain't ashamed to tell that. There's a lot of people like he was doing the same thing. But as I was doing that, I felt the change happening in my life. I started seeing things differently. I started moving away from the fondness of that lifestyle, the street life, right? I started moving away from the fondness of it. And I started being more fond of a reality that I had created for myself that I didn't want to be in. But that was going to be where I was going to be until I started living differently, until I started thinking differently, because change only comes about as a result of how somebody's thinking changes. You got to change what you think. That means that you have to look at your beliefs about a particular thing, and then you have to look at the consequences for the particular thing that you have seen as what we call in treatment as the antecedent, the activating event, the event that happened. What is your belief about what happened, and what are the consequences of that belief? And then you have to dispute your beliefs, because you have to ask yourself, is it a valid one? What makes it valid? If you validate it as being, something that you want to stand on, why? So it's a whole process of thinking. But I began to do those things as I was reading the Quran. I mean, I can tell you, that was the first time and the only time I had ever seen him. I heard about, the nation and so on and so forth. And then, as years went by and I stayed the course, and moved me away from that lifestyle, I ran into and met another good brother who used to go to the masjid. Well, anybody who know that the nation, you go to the mosque. But I had never been to a masjid. I had never been on the rug, side to side, shoulder to shoulder, with other men. I'd never, I had been, but not in that environment. We were doing a thing, side to side, but, yeah, and then, he said, he's always telling me, I'm going to Juma, I'm going to the masjid. I want to say, yo, can I go? I felt like a little kid. Like, yo, can I go? So I ain't never been inside of the masjid, man. Had no idea what to do. I never, I felt like a little boy, man, going in there. Now, Donald was quite a few years older than me when I met him. He's may God continue to have peace and blessings upon him and mercy on his soul. He actually, he took me, man, and he told me he was telling me on the ride there what to do when I came in. He walked me through everything. And then I started, going to the masjid. And during the course of that, man, I learned a lot of things, man. I saw a lot of things, that were really off-putting. A lot of things that were off-putting. So, it didn't set on my spirit well. And I started finding myself, I changed, went to another masjid. And I really wasn't connected there. Then I joined another one, Philadelphia masjid. And I was welcomed in there, man, but these folks didn't know me from a can of paint, man. And it was such a good relationship there, that I actually ran for to be a board member. And I think I fell like 1 or 2 votes short. 1 or 2 votes short. Yeah. And it was a really good experience. So the Philadelphia Masjid, I think, is one of the greatest institutions in Philadelphia. That didn't change how I felt in terms of what I saw in and what I saw out. Because there were still those things, and that's humanity, man. You can't change humanity's condition because that's humanity's condition. But it doesn't mean that I, as an individual, don't separate myself from environments, people, places, things, that don't rest well on my spirit. That don't rest well on my spirit. And that's what this is really about. It's about you. You have to learn to be selfless when it comes to what you allow in your space, who you allow in your space. One of the first papers I did when I started my collegiate studies was why some women remain in abusive relationships. Yeah, it was one of the first papers. I saw some of the things that my mother went through, early on. I saw myself and, how rigid I was. I had become throughout the years as a teen and into early adulthood. And I wanted to see, why do you stay? Because the lifestyle that I was living when I met my first wife, it was like I was a bum. I was in the street hustling, doing a little everything, getting high and all that kind of stuff like that. And I was blessed to have her, in my corner and to stick with me throughout those years. And she got it bad. And I'm not talking about like I didn't beat on her or nothing like that. It was just always my street attitude, my street mentality, my I wasn't a good dude. I wasn't a nice person to be around, and it was just a matter of I had to see. I had to do some research, and a lot of things that I learned then, aided me in my process of change. So like we're multifaceted. So the issues that we encounter, we have to work on them as they present themselves. You can't work on everything at the same time. But when you're aware of things, you be more conscious of how you interact with people, how you talk to people, what you say to people, how you say it. And I needed to learn that. So let me go to the article. Whether you enjoy meditation, attending a religious service, or praying, spiritual care, spiritual self-care is important, not intellectual self-care. As you consider your spiritual life, ask yourself, what questions do you ask yourself about your life and experience? Are you engaging in spiritual practices that you find fulfilling? Stop holding on to religion if it ain't working for you. You can part ways from it, take its content, that's your foundation, and you live by the values and beliefs. You don't have to be committed to the dogma. You don't have to be committed to, those things that are part of activities related to the religion itself. Right? It's how you treat yourself first and foremost. The book tells you need to save yourself first, then go back and save your family. What do they tell you when you're on the airplane? When the stuff hits the fan and those bags drop, what did they tell you to do first? Put the mask on yourself first, then aid others that are in that area. Right? That's what they tell you on the airplane. They tell you on the airplane for a reason. How you gonna run around start saving everybody else? You ain't got no oxygen. You'll be dead before you can even get to yourself. And we're that way in life many times. We go around putting masks on everybody else to save them, to give them oxygen. And meanwhile, our source of living is being depleted. It's the same exact thing, man. We can't keep running around trying to save other people. Don't ever believe, don't ever think that you can take somebody from a condition that they're currently in and take them out of it and put them in something else, and they're going to be different. Don't work that way. It's work. Change is work. Being reconditioned is work. Getting out of your head and getting to your heart, to your spirit is work. I tried it. I have taken somebody from an efficiency apartment to a 3-4 bedroom house, and their condition remained the same. Therefore, it didn't matter. That was something I wanted for them. That was something I believed that they wanted to have. But they weren't pursuing it. If that's what they wanted, they would have obtained that. Why didn't they obtain that? Why didn't they obtain it? You have to pay attention to people. People will suck you dry, especially if you're a caretaker, especially if you're in a neighbor, especially if you're just one of those people who try to look out for others, and then you look up and they ain't got nothing to give you. Not that it's a matter of you're expecting all the time for them to reciprocate such, but you are in fact looking for a change within them, and it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen, man. The only time he's violent is when he gets drunk. No. The predisposition is there. The propensity for such is there. Drinking just elevates it. Smoking just elevates it. Stop wasting energy. Stop wasting energy. Stop giving people wifely and husbandly duties, right? Who aren't deserving of it. And you just staying and you hope. And you hope. And it doesn't happen. It's not what the person wants, it's what you want. You follow me? So when I talk about relationships, I look at how is that relationship settling that within me, right? And I always refer to, Adam and Eve, because I asked the question, I said, well, what was Adam experiencing when he was in the place that he was by himself? Was he a boy? Or was he automatically a man? What is man? So if he was a man, what was he experiencing in the place by himself that God saw the need for him to have a helper. See, these are the kind of things that you had to begin to look at. These are the kind of things I began to look at as I was reading content in the books. There were just so many things missing from me, which, when we're talking about emotional self-care and we're talking about spiritual self-care, which emotionally, it frustrated me because I'm an intellectual. I need to understand. I need to understand. What was Adam in that place? He was the first man, but man is a general sense. When we're talking about man, man is destroying the world. I don't know how that can happen. The world's been here for a long time. But anywho, so it's just a matter of, looking at what was his condition at that time. What was his age at that time? Because we know we conceive, the fetus grows. What was his condition at the time that he needed a partner? Right? How long was he in that place before he was given a partner? So it's these kind of things that in my studies I begin to look at. Well, because you have to understand your own humanity. And that's why I talked about here. It can involve anything that helps you develop a deeper sense of meaning, understanding, or connection with the universe. Do you understand the body is comprised of, I think, 96% of what's in the world as far as the makeup of the earth? How many of those things, if you look at the elements, the thing we should look at in school, that elements chart with all these different cadmiums and irons and all this other stuff all on it. We should have that in school. Like, what the hell am I learning this for? Well, we should have been learning it then. We should have been, understanding it then, because then we would have another understanding, a deeper understanding of the human being. But we didn't do that. So now that you know that, go look at the elements chart and look at what the human being is comprised of. See, you have to make that connection to the world around you, right? And yourself. Because then you will begin to see more meaning, what you actually represent in all of this. Right? The water that's here, the trees, everything that man needs to be and remain healthy and have a longer, fruitful life is here. It was already here. It's just been replaced by those who know what's here with medications and all those things, because it's all capitalism. Right? But things are already here for us. How is it that I can just pick something up and chew it and my stomach feels better? How is it I can just pick something up and eat it and my body feels refreshed? It's filled with vitamins and nutrients, all those things that I need. How could you not think that you're part of it because you haven't gotten the information before? Because we're conditioned to believe that we get our nutrition and everything off the supermarket shelves. And a lot of what we get off the supermarket shelves are killing us. Go into the market. Everything that's on the outside lanes, if you go all the way around, look at what's on the outside lanes, typically in most markets. Right? Fruits, nuts, vegetables, the meats, your dairy product. You have the bakery that's typically on the other side. You have your breads and things of that nature. Then when you go to the inner aisles, you have all the stuff that kills you. For real. Next time you go in the supermarket, look. Right? So it's really everything on the outside lanes is what you should be eating. They just take some of the other stuff and put it in between. The stuff that has been processed, that's supposed to be good for you, they put something else in it because it's about making money and it's about production. It's about supply and demand. So, you'll find some of those things kind of laden through the aisles, just like the government, laden with Confederates and the Union and all these, which is why we have the conditions that we have that impacts this. So just start looking at, what makes you uncomfortable and start removing those things that make you uncomfortable. And if religion happens to be one of those, keep it moving. You have the spiritual foundation. Keep reading, keep looking at purpose and meaning and humanity's condition that led it in a direction that it was led in, because you'll see everything that's there. Right? That everything that is there that was put there. And everything that was put there, we know that it was put there by man's hand. And if you really pay attention to what's happening in the world, it's not unfamiliar territory, which makes life easier for you to move along on your spiritual journey. So, you really, those are the kind of things that you want to begin to pay attention to. So it's the season now, and it's the political season. It's the holiday season. It's a lot of things, that are going on right now. But listen, you guys have a happy holiday, right? If you celebrate the holidays, be safe out there, but start weeding people out. I'm not a person who makes New Year's resolutions. I live day to day, so there should be a resolution every day to live today better than I did yesterday, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. Just taking a look at what you feel like today, why you feel what you feel. If you're feeling some emotions because, it's coming up on the holiday and this person's not here, that person's not here, when you have to take a look at the relationship you built with that person. A physical absence shouldn't be that devastating. And for some it is because you haven't allowed yourself to go through the process of grief. You stopped midway. Some people stop at anger. Some people stop at disbelief, and they don't allow themselves to continue the process of grief. There's a process. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. My father was murdered back in 2004. I think about him regularly, right? Our interactions, our conversation, things will always be present. So I'm not stuck on a physical presence. I live in Florida now, so it's a lot of people that I don't see anymore. I'm not a phone person, as I said earlier. But I just lost a mentor just last week. He was the one that aided in my getting my life on course, and the education that I eventually pursued, was something that he influenced. So, you have to begin to look at, death is inevitable. Death is part of life. Life is death. From the point of conception, the process begins. But a spiritual death is worse than a physical death. To walk around wandering aimlessly, right, in spirit in disarray, all up in your head about things, you feel awful, you just want this to be over. It's not your purpose. Find your meaning, right? Know that it's just a matter of time, and when that time comes, you won't even know. No matter how sick you may be, how well you may be, right? Listen, we're at the hour. I'd like to thank y'all for tuning in to Daddy's Right Here Live. Don't forget to check me out. Yeah, check out my music. right? On every streaming platform you can think of, you'll find it. Again, I'm your host, as always, Girl, and y'all have a great, wonderful, fantastic holiday.
Spreading through the community just like a damn disease. What I do in office, minimal messages sent to you, subliminal, taking what's not mine, a criminal, the game I play, political. What I do in office, minimal messages sent to you, subliminal, taking what's not mine, a criminal, the game I play, political. Think you know me, not on the same level. I'm a real gangster, running with the devil. Only see me in person when it's time for the race. I know none of your needs, a damn disgrace. An elected official, liquor chaser, character superficial, constituent.
And y'all need to bang this in your car, especially when you're going to the polling place, especially when you're going to have that town hall meeting. Play.
What I do in office, minimal messages sent to you, subliminal, taking what's not mine, criminal, taking my play, political.
You're listening to the song Political. This was my second release in 2021.
Once in office, promises broken, misled you with confidence, made you a token. Some of us are real, many are just flakes. We're members of a party with no booty shakes. Think you're represented from the hall to the house. When it's time to speak up for you, quiet as a mouse. I have my own agenda, little do you know. Once getting into office,
and they all do it.
Just go with the flow. What I do in office, minimal messages sent to you, subliminal, taking what's not mine, criminal, the game I play, political. What I do in office, minimal messages sent to you, subliminal, taking what's not mine, criminal, the game I play, political. You thought I'd make a difference, gave me your trust, like semen in a condom, no love, just lust. You want to see change, so do I. But my allegiance is to the party, so to you I lie. I understand the system, I know you don't. Leaving the party, I know you won't. Invited to the party, you're having no fun. Aiding and abetting, thinking I'm gonna be the one. What I do in office, minimal messages sent to you, subliminal, taking what's not mine,
Criminal.
The game I play, political. What I do in office, minimal messages sent to you, subliminal, taking what's not mine, criminal. The game I play, political. What I do in office, minimal messages.
I'll see you guys next Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in. If you missed the episode, you can find it on Spotify podcast. You can go to my Severe Leave Educational Station on YouTube. Hell, you can just go back to where you're watching that today.